The fourth part of constructivism deals with Frederick's schematic account of memory, basically demonstration of remembering. Reconstructive memory and schema is a theory which has been proposed by Sir Frederick Bartlett, one of the early figures in memory research. So he has a lot of contribution in the area of memory research. Bartlett's central focus, as we can see, is that memory is not like a tape recorder. That's what he says. It does not faithfully play back our experiences. Instead, it changes or reconstructs them imaginatively. So basically, memory is not something where you can have an image and you reproduce it. It discourages the reproduction of any information. Rather than it focuses on the reconstruction of that information imaginatively. Remembering was a book which was published by Sir Frederick in 1932. It actually grew out of his dissertation experiments conducted in 1913. He conducted all these experiments on people in order to see how people remember information and then how they narrate or they express that information. Bartlett tested people under fairly relaxed conditions, and his data considered largely verbal reports. Bartlett's used very casual method, almost anecdotal, in terms of listening to stories or providing information and asking them to narrate. So that is how he conducted all these experimentations, just to see how people remember and then reproduce that information. Bartlett emphasized the constructive nature of cognition, perceiving, remembering, and all of thinking, which constitutes schema. Building a new schema, according to Bartlett, is about taking into account a simulation process. Sometimes we simulate new information, changing our schema to fit what we have learned. So you assimilate new information and then you fit that in your existing schema. Accommodation is when you come across a new information, you accommodate it, but you don't have to change your information, you rather keep the existing schema intact. Bartlett devised two methods of studying remembering. One is repeated reproduction and second is serial reproduction. Now, repeated reproduction involves all three of these stages: shortening of information, confabulation, rationalization in the course of repeating or reproducing a story. The serial reproduction technique involves a human chain, and if there were to be one weak link in the chain, someone who was widely inaccurate in recall, then there would be no hope of a person later in the chain correcting the false memory. So a sequence of reproduction where one information is repeated in a serial in the form of chain from one person to another, and once if there's a weak link, the chain simply breaks down in terms of providing the correct information. In early 1970s, many psychologists invoked Bartlett's ideas of reconstructive theory, but well known among them is Elizabeth Loftus, who revisited his ideas and constructed a number of experiments on people to see that how his ideas work or how you can come up with any new information. We'll show you a small clip where she is going to tell you herself how she has conducted the experiments and what her findings are.
I first started studying this constructive memory process in the 1970s. I did my experiments that involved showing people simulated crimes and accidents and asking them questions about what they remember. In one study, we showed people a simulated accident, and we asked people how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. And we asked other people how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. And if we asked the leading smash question, the witnesses told us the cars were going faster. And moreover, that leading smashed question caused people to be more likely to tell us that they saw broken glass in the accident scene when there wasn't any broken glass at all. In another study, we showed a simulated accident where a car went through an intersection with a stop sign, and if we asked a question that insinuated it was a yield sign, many witnesses told us they remember seeing a yield sign at the intersection, not a stop sign. And you might be thinking, well, these are filmed events. They're not particularly stressful. Would the same kind of mistakes be made with a really stressful event? In a study we published just a few months ago, we have an answer to this question. Because what was unusual about this study is we arranged for people to have a very stressful experience. The subjects in the study were members of the U.S. military who were undergoing a harrowing training exercise to teach them what it's going to be like for them if they are ever captured as prisoners of war. And as part of this training exercise, these soldiers are interrogated in an aggressive, hostile, physically abusive fashion for 30 minutes. And later on, they have to try to identify the person who conducted that interrogation. And when we feed them suggestive information that insinuates it's a different person, many of them misidentify their interrogator, often identifying someone who doesn't even remotely resemble the real interrogator. And so what these studies are showing is that when you feed people misinformation about some experience that they may have had, you can distort or contaminate or change their memory.
So let's conclude her findings. She says that eyewitnesses are unreliable because they are influenced by leading questions. When we reconstruct memories, we change them by incorporating new information we learned after the incident. So our reconstruction gets affected by new information that we learn after a particular incident. That is why our information or reconstruction is unreliable. Later on, the original part of the memory can neither be determined nor retrieved. So one cannot determine what was the original part of the memory before that. To conclude, in the word of Bartlett, remembering is not re-excitation of innumerable fixed, lifeless, and fragmentary traces. Rather, remembering appears to be far more decisively an affair of construction rather than reproduction.